students, this may hurt you more than me, as I'm really fighting a cold. But I have finished your Chapter 3 assignment mode and discussion board. And your discussion board was really excellent. That's probably the best class I've had as far as they got into some detail and reached out to find resources that defended their position. A lot of good ideas. You know, Ann talked about the three-legged stool and how we should be a third of income, third sales, and third property tax. And most of you, I think, probably agreed with that. And if you look at TIOSA, that was somewhat the plan, but because of the increase in property value, why that has become more of a 50% property tax and 25 for the other two. Some suggested increasing the sales tax, and with the majority of the senators being from urban Nebraska, it's going to be difficult for them to support increased sales tax. And another area that some of you mentioned was taking away some of the benefits that the large corporations have had, and some of them use TIF money, which they don't pay taxes for 15 years. The problem with taking that away is we're already losing some of our industry, some of our business, to states that do not require nearly as much as far as taxes from corporations and businesses. So that becomes a bit of an issue. Some of you talked about, putting a lower level on right now, ag taxes are 75%, and some would like to see it lowered to 65%. We'll wait and see what happens there. There's also another proposal that land would only be valued at the amount that it could bring as far as a profit. I'm not sure how that all would calculate. Other people talked about an internet tax, which I think, if I read correctly, Amazon is already paying that. I think there's probably pressure from the feds that a certain amount of their sales is then taxed as sales tax, which we eventually pay. But it does create a revenue source for Nebraska. I had an uncle who taught finance at the University of San Diego, and his comment, they had a lot of different plans in California, but his comment was, the best tax, the most stable tax is property tax, because it's always there. And I think somewhat that is true, but there's terrific pressure on schools or superintendents or boards of education in rural Nebraska to limit that tax. And I had a superintendent from a small town that I know very well, and I may have mentioned this before, that he mentioned that if he named his 5 top taxpayers, they are very, very supportive of the school, and of course they are farmers. But he also said they don't think it's fair. They're supporting of the school, but they think others are paying too much. And there's a bit of a image in eastern Nebraska that there's a lot of systems out in rural Nebraska that are inefficient. And I was once asked to speak to a group in Omaha about that, and I think there were some things they misunderstood about per pupil cost. And of course, per pupil cost for a small district is usually very high just because of the numbers. But even the schools that have large numbers, I saw an article the other day by, I think, a board member from Miller talking about there were tough times, but they were addressing those tough times. So, unfortunately, a lot of people look to cuts as the way to manage this situation. We aren't very excited about that. The cost of education, of course, really doesn't go up, and does go up, and there are certain costs that you're not going to be able to eliminate. But the idea of small schools consolidating is fairly popular in the eastern part of the state. And I've always said there are schools that are small by necessity and schools that are small because they want to be. And the feeling is if they're small because they want to be, they should pay their own bills. And but there are schools, and as one of you mentioned, I think Thetford had students who are going 45 miles. That's a small school by necessity, and I think it needs it probably needs some geographic transportation support, those types of things. But most of those small schools are paying their own bills. I mean, it's expensive, and they're complaining and upset about it, but they are paying their own bills. My you had some good ideas about what probably could be done, and one of the things that they talked about gambling, casino tax. My idea, and I threw it out to a state senator, it didn't go very far. I think it could to some senators, but would be, we don't want to increase gambling in Nebraska. There's an element that doesn't want to see that happen. My proposed legislation would be that casinos could be built within 1 mile of any state that has gambling. So you could see a huge casino complex in Omaha, down where the one company is leaving, where there's a huge park there. It wouldn't increase gambling much, because if they want to gamble, they're going to go that extra mile. But it certainly would put the tax dollars in Nebraska, which I think could be significant. The probably is about the biggest gimmick that I would have. I don't think you can raise alcohol taxes much more. Although some of you, when you were reporting in other states, did see that there was some differences in what taxes our states taxed for tobacco and for alcohol, and that usually isn't a real major influence. Anyway, I did post in the announcements a link that Jay Opperman had posted, and it really is almost a tutorial on how taxes in Nebraska work. I think it'd be worth looking at. I think next year I'll put it in the required reading for the course. But I think it really is pretty well done. And then somebody else Greg, I think, put something about Open Sky, one of their suggestions about taxes that hadn't been closed. And I know one of you said to help the farmers, you would increase some tax exemptions for machinery and for repairs, and Open Sky mentioned that had cost millions of dollars, and it was already basically in place. So anyway, I think that's something that's worth looking at. I think that's most of the areas that you covered, but I think people made a real effort to try to come up with some answers, but even more importantly, to kind of see how difficult the choices are going to be for the Nebraska legislature. I again apologize for my voice, and I'm started cardio rehab today, so didn't amount to much. Walked 6 minutes, so that was pretty easy. So I think I'm going to be okay with it. Thank you for listening to this.